Thanks for joining us for this episode of Coffee with Closers, where business leaders share insights on how to build businesses from the ground up and best practices for innovating in their industry.
Hey Mark, I'm super excited to have you join me for this episode of Coffee with Closers.
Hey, how you doing?
Most certainly. Well, I appreciate you joining me for this episode. I feel like I've known you forever because I think the early days of Hubspot Academy, you were kind of the face of the Hubspot Academy. So I think many people have probably seen many of your content that you've created way back in the day.
How many certifications do you have through Hubspot Academy?
Man, I think I've taken a whole lot of HubSpot Academy certifications over the years. Most certainly the inbound, the HubSpot marketing software, HubSpot Sales Hub, you name it, I have it. So it's been a long journey, and we've been a HubSpot partner since the time that you joined, because I think 2011 or 2010 or so when you joined HubSpot, right?
Yeah, the spring of 2010.
So obviously you learned a lot. You built the HubSpot Academy, so you know a thing or two about leading with content, building a community, and how that actually helps grow a brand. And I think you kind of have that as part of your LinkedIn title. You said, content and community are key ingredients to accelerating a business's revenue, delivering more customer value, and building an enduring brand. So talk to our audience a little bit about, where that philosophy that comes from, and then how have you been able to, kind of make that a reality at companies like HubSpot and now at Drift.
Yeah, brand is one of the most important things a business needs to obsess about. It's one of the only things that truly makes you as a business unique. So when you think about what brand really is, it's reputation. And how do you earn a reputation that gets people to want to maybe do business with you? But before that, even just recognize that you exist and are willing to give you their time and attention to pay attention to you as a brand. And what's behind a brand? It's people. It's the people of the business, the employees, the team who's running the business, the customers of the business. And what are those folks? If you put all those folks together, it's a community. Community is a loaded term, so we can unpack that maybe, but it's the people and a sense of belonging, a shared set of beliefs, a purpose, a mission, a sense of togetherness that bonds these people together to then say, hey, I identify as this or with this particular brand. The greatest brands of all time do this exceptionally well, and they empower the community through many different ways. But content these days has become a really big way to empower a community, both through content that your community members create, user-generated content, community-led content, but also the content your business creates and publishes out to the community. So it's all around, those ideas of content, community, brand. It's about building that relationship, building that trust and reputation, and creating an effect that has like a multiplying effect, right? It's kind of like a force multiplier, if you will, when you put all those things together in the right way.
Yeah, and you mentioned the brand is an important aspect of any business, and I think we, on the performance side of marketing, we often see our clients are oftentimes trying to bid on our competitor's brand because their brand has an extremely high value and tremendous amount of search volume for that term. And oftentimes they're too impatient to invest the time needed to build a brand name, but oftentimes trying to live off of the brand name of the competitor. So do you see that happening a lot in the marketing world?
Yeah, maybe brand name of the competitor, brand name, like maybe the category, right? They're drafting off the category maybe, or creating, a category that's related to that category that brand has created. It's positioning, if you're thinking about it like that, right? I see people ripping off messaging and positioning. But again, that's one small piece of what a brand really is, right? A brand has a soul, a heart, and a mind. And you can't rip those things off. And that's what, if you're really talking about like brand building, you're talking about those things. And messaging and positioning, yes, are important, and people steal them, which sucks. they steal your colors, they steal tons of stuff, products, right? But when you add up the things that are truly unique to your ethos, if you will, those things are like you can't steal them. Like it's not possible.
Yeah, and I think it's especially as you're building a company, and oftentimes I think in the interest, especially if you're a funded company and you are under pressure to perform, you need to drive demand and generate leads and all of those things. Oftentimes you're kind of trying to speed up the process, but I think brand building isn't that easy to build a brand around, right? Because when you're talking about building a community, creating content, getting users to contribute the content, build that ecosystem or ethos, right? That's not going to happen overnight. That is a very lengthy journey. And I think I was reading an article that you published in Medium where you talked about how you made a case for even building the Hubspot Academy and how long it took you. I think it was like almost 2 or 3 years before you were able to even make a case for having HubSpot invest into this academy concept, right, to be able to get better user adoption and retention of the product.
Yeah, but you can do both at the same time, right? Like you can focus on the performance management side of marketing, which is super important, and build a strong demand funnel and a strong customer success motion while you build your brand. They actually complement each other. And that's why I talk about how content and community are such powerful forces for both those things. So an example would be like from the Hubspot Academy, or I can give you the Drift example with Drift Insider. We built Drift Insider as this community and content platform for marketing and salespeople. It started back, 2+ years ago now. We have over 45,000 members. We knew all along the reason we're building this was to do those 3 things you mentioned at the beginning, right? Grow the brands, create more value for our customers, and drive demand, drive pipeline and revenue. But like you don't just go into building something like Insider or HubSpot Academy with a singular focus. You might have a focus for a month or 2, meaning this month we're going to focus on creating content that's specific to this persona, and it's going to be measured in this way, and it's going to be helping us get more members who fit into our ideal customer profile. So it's a demand gen function, right? And we're going to try to nurture those people into becoming someone who's interested in taking a meeting with our sales team, and it's going to become pipeline, right? But like once you have some of that stuff established, you can move on to the next thing, right? And you're just building blocks, right? As part of this overall structure you're creating, this organization that supports the brand, the brand. In this case, there was this sub-brand we've created, Drift Insider, that is supporting the overall brand of Drift. So that's how I would think about it.
Yeah, so if you can expand on that a little bit, because I think, especially when you're starting a company and you have, let's say if you're a service company and you have so many different product offering or service offering, and you have several different industries or vertical that you serve, right? And if you need to have demand created for the different product categories and the different industries that you serve and the different personas within those companies, is your best practice then would be to just pick one and focus on it, build all the necessary piece, whether it be case studies, testimonials, blogs, resources, right? Some sort of upgrade content, whatever else that goes into it, even the nurture sequence, or kind of spread yourself too thin and trying to do everything for every industry that you can possibly serve?
No, I would focus on it based off of what is your revenue plan, your operating plan called for from like a revenue growth standpoint, and focus in first using that. And focus in on parts of the funnel, not just new business funnel, but also maybe customer success, side of the business, of where you need to improve. And then think about, through a combination of like what we've been talking about, what would be best built or created to serve that particular function. So yeah, to your point, don't do it all. Focus on one thing at a time. If it's like a persona, focus on this persona and focus on some aspect of that persona. Don't try to do all of the content for that persona. Like iterate as you go. Iteration is such an important thing, right? Like I always say, like, ship it, learn, ship it again. That's a mentality that David Cancel has instilled in me from a long time ago. This notion of just constant like shipping things, but reflection on those things, shipping them to the right standard and quality with the right thought, but not trying to boil the ocean. It's kind of like just applying an agile methodology to how you create content. You could create content and build a community through an agile way, or more of like a Scrum top-down way. We actually do both at Drift. I've done both in my past. Both work. It just depends on what number are you trying to optimize for. That's going to then help you decide, and that number plus audience is going to help you decide what approach you take in actually trying to get to that outcome.
Makes sense. So obviously you've been in the marketing operations side, then you were a marketing leader, then you went on to build the Hubspot Academy. Now you're at managing the community at Drift. So you've had multiple hats, right? You wore different roles in different marketing functions. How has your approach on marketing evolved over the years?
It's changed as the marketing landscape has changed a little bit, but it's always been grounded in a principle first based mindset or methodology, right? It's like, I think of it as like, why are you doing what you're doing, and how are you going to go about that? The reason why I joined HubSpot and I stayed at HubSpot for so long, the reason I joined Drift and hopefully can stay at Drift for a very long time, it's very like principle-based organizations, right? Mm-hmm. They have a strong set of values, and that's what you really do need to build a great community and a great like enduring brand. You need to have that, like I said before, that sense of ownership and belonging and accountability and self-identification that you can then identify with this larger group of people. So to me, it comes down to that. So what does it really mean? It's a people-centric approach to building something great. Like nothing is done without people. I know it's like classic cliche, like that's obvious, Mark. But at the end of the day, it's how you help those people organize themselves, how you work together, how you deliver real value to them. And that's where the hard work comes in, right? So we thought like with Drift Insider and HubSpot Academy, we can deliver a lot of value in the form of content that's educational, that's inspirational, that's even sometimes kind of entertaining. And we're not asking for anything back. We just want you to use this for what you think you need to use it for. And we'll give you some suggestions on how you should use it. But at some point, hopefully that value then can repay us, and you come to us saying like, look, we need some help with our marketing or sales, and we need some software to help with this. And you've built a reputation, Drift, for helping us already. Let's talk, right? Or you got me so excited about this thing, this concept of the MQL is dead. Let's talk about that now. And I want to talk to someone on your sales team about like how I could apply that concept to my business, right? You spark something in someone, and the community that you build around this can spark something in someone as well, because they say to someone, oh my God, I learned about this great thing, conversational marketing. Did you know all about this? Oh, you didn't? By the way, go check it out. And they have a ton of free resources, and that word of mouth that comes with community, that is so important today, because we as people have been empowered through word of mouth since the rise of the commercial internet. Since the rise of the internet, like word of mouth has become so easy to do. And that's at the end of the day what community is. So when you think about that, it's about like connecting those chains in a value chain together. It's like you're just trying to build another chain in the value chain, and you're trying to strengthen that chain over and over again through these different interactions and different experiences you can deliver to people.
Mm-hmm. That's a good segue, because I think the next few questions that I had was around the whole concept of conversational marketing and the concept of the MQL is dead. And obviously HubSpot coined the term inbound marketing, and they wrote a book around it, right? And that became almost a vernacular of modern day marketers that we all use the concept of inbound marketing. And I think Drift, really coined the term conversational marketing. And I think the audience that may not know much about that, can you just give a quick definition of what you mean by conversational marketing?
Yeah, conversational marketing is the easiest and fastest way to engage with your buyers and customers in a very personalized, human-centric way. So it uses the power of conversation. It's like, what's the most powerful thing, or what's the most important thing you need to use to actually build a relationship with someone? It's conversation. Like you have to have a dialogue. Like you can't, a relationship is not going to be started or built without conversation. If there is a way to do that, I would love to know. So maybe you can enlighten me on that. I haven't come across one. But just like how inbound is really good at attracting people, conversational marketing is amazing at engaging people in this highly hyper-personalized way. And it uses the simple 3-part framework of engage, understand, and recommend to engage with someone with the right context, in the right medium, to help them understand a bit more about how you can help them in that moment, and for you as that business to understand a bit more about them. And then the recommend piece is just helping them get to the next, or to the thing, maybe not the next thing, but to the thing, the answer, the piece of content, the person they are looking for during that moment, during that interaction. So just engage, understand, recommend. And guess what? That's kind of like what any natural conversation does. Today we're kind of having an interview, so I wouldn't say this is a conversation. This is definitely an interview. There's a difference between an interview, a conversation. There's a difference between a conversation and I'd say even like a debate. But when you're having a conversation, you're naturally engaging with someone in different ways. You're getting a sense of shared understanding, and you're recommending things throughout the conversation. And you definitely probably have a recommendation at the end of the conversation, right? Like it's not just like, oh, I'm done. Like, no, like let's do this next, or let's do that, or like let's meet again, or like whatever, right? So that we took the natural way people have conversations and applied it to our platform, our revenue acceleration platform, because conversational marketing and conversational sales does it naturally engages people in the most human-centric way to help a business get to the business goal, which is revenue faster. So if you can use the power of the conversation to create a better experience that's in the voice of that business, in the context of that business, in the brand experience of that business, the goal then is to ultimately generate more revenue and do it faster.
So I know, obviously Drift wrote a book about the whole concept of MQL is dead. And I know when demand gen became very popular and inbound marketing too was all around the concept of, hey, how do we get people to come to our website, like attracting them there and then figuring out how do we get them to convert, the whole concept of leveraging ebooks and webinars and any sort of content funnel to get them to convert. But then, Drift kind of just completely flip the script on that concept, right? So talk to our marketing leaders about this whole concept of removing this, gated content concept, and how can, like you just described, in a natural and most, conversational way, lead people to resources that are most helpful for them to help them make the decision on whatever that next step might be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be brutally honest. At HubSpot, we taught this method of like click on a call to action, go to a landing page, fill out a form, go to a thank you page, get an email. Like I have to we're unteaching all that now. Like you can still have that on your website, and some people will do it. So I'm not saying like maybe you have to get rid of it. It might still be a good option. The ultimate nirvana though is that you don't need that. Like you're such a sophisticated go-to market, and it doesn't have to be like sophisticated. Like I have to think about like Drift, big business, or like I don't know, another business that's doing this well, Slack or whatever, right? Like you just have to think about it as I'm a business who's got 100-page website, 200-page website, and instead of me funneling, you're literally funneling everyone into a form, I'm gonna keep my website open for business, right? So what I mean by that is I'm gonna put a conversational marketing experience on every page. And those people who visit any of those pages will be able to have a conversation with my business. And sometimes that's with a human, sometimes that's with a chatbot, sometimes that's extremely contextual and rich based off of who's on that page, to the visitor themselves, where are they in the buying journey, where are they coming from, and what page they're on. So we can use all of those things, the who, where, and what, to change the experience. But what you really just want to do is say, like, look, you're just trying to you're coming to our website for some reason, and we're trying to make it easy for you to understand that thing you're trying to learn more about, or that answer you're trying to get, or that piece of information you're trying to find. Let's create as little roadblocks, friction to you getting that thing, and let's serve the audience, not serve the algorithm, not serve our marketing and sales funnel. And let's do that with conversational marketing. And by the way, if you do that with conversational marketing and with like I said, chatbots and live chat in this context, you could better than serve up to someone the next logical thing that they would want to maybe like learn more about, which is, hey, for us, we have the MQL is dead. Check it out on our website. You see the chatbot, it engages with you in a conversation. It's going to understand a little bit more about maybe what you're looking to do. And maybe you're looking to actually talk to someone in sales because you have some questions now. So it's going to get you to sales. Maybe you just want to like learn more about this and you want to watch a video about it. It's going to get you to that video. So it recommends these things, right? And it gives you options. What forms don't do is it doesn't give you options. It's like one path, one singular path into the thing. the power of conversational marketing is there's options, and it's options across your entire website, across every page on your website. So you're actually opening up your funnel if you use it across your whole website, where forms are only used on a smattering of pages.
Mm-hmm. So my question is to the, obviously the marketers are, they are getting the whole idea, because we're seeing the conversion rates on these websites are dropping. It's extremely expensive to spend money on Google ads and LinkedIn ads to get somebody to a content assets only for them to bounce back because they don't feel comfortable filling out a form, because they don't want to be in another email list, right? And we're getting inundated with all kinds of emails. So obviously that side, we're all seeing it happening in real time. But at the same time, we're also held responsible for the number of leads generated, because that's what the metrics that we're measured against. So how do you, both the marketing leaders as well as the senior leaders, to understand that maybe we need to forego that measuring rod as the only way to measure success in marketing efforts, and start to figure out, like, is this really, what we're spending our money on, which could be creating content, all those things, is there some other sentiment that we can leverage or measure as a way to see progress?
Yeah, I mean, marketers should be focused on driving revenue and pipeline, not leads, not MQLs. They should focus on creating real value for the business that's quantified in a pipeline dollar amount and then a revenue dollar amount. Like that's marketing these days. And when you think about conversational marketing, yeah, it can help you like generate leads and meetings, right? Even a meeting though is not pipeline yet. It's a meeting with someone, a sales development rep or maybe account executive, that hopefully will turn into a real opportunity, but it's not pipeline yet. The other beautiful thing about conversational marketing is, if done correctly, it uses the power of this concept called conversational sales. And when people come to your website that fit within your ideal customer profile, that are the right buyers for you, or they like somehow self-identify themselves as the right buyers because they're engaging with the chatbot, the smart thing to do is to notify your sales team or the account owner of that engagement. So conversational marketing brings sales a little bit more up funnel, and conversational marketing allows the marketing team to go a little bit more down the funnel, get closer to the revenue, by creating the instant connection between the website visitor and the seller, or the customer and the customer success person, because it allows that identification of the visitor, that understanding of who it is, the qualification in the traditional sense, and then provides the visitor with something in real time of value right away, on top of, ideally, if the content's ungated, on top of them just seeing the content ungated, free, no need to fill anything out and be worried that you're going to be spammed or cold called. So like that's the other beauty of this whole thing, right? It's actually bringing marketing and sales together.
Mm-hmm. And I think, do you think, when does that, especially when you're talking about bots and chat bots, right? Like probably a good amount of conversation probably happening on that chat thread itself, maybe starting with the bot and maybe a human being taking over and then trying to move to maybe a sales conversation. Like, is there some sort of have you seen any sort of metrics around a percentage of people that start the conversation, how many of them are actually turns into a good sales conversation, or any sort of metrics that proves that this approach has been much more effective than putting a form to get people to convert?
Oh, I mean, yeah, there's a ton. If you go to drift.com, just go to our customer section of the website. We have a ton of customer stories. We just relaunched, we just built in conjunction with Forrester, a total economic impact study that's showing basically like a net present value, so an ROI, if you will, of like, for these larger enterprises that are using Drift, of like $9 million over the course of 3 years. So it's like, it's costing them just over $1 million or so to implement Drift, all in costs, not just the software. I'm talking, they look at this, the study looked at everything, right? And then it looked at the return, right, which was north of $10 million over that same time period. And so the net present value of that relationship, that software vendor and solution, Drift that is like $9 million or so. So you're talking huge increases in pipeline and leads and meetings. To go back to your question, it does depend on every business. It's like, what are you trying to optimize for? Are you trying to optimize for email conversion? Are you trying to optimize for a meeting? Are you trying to optimize for time to meeting? Most of our customers optimize for booking more qualified meetings, getting to the meeting faster, and creating more qualified pipeline, meaning that pipeline has a higher conversion rate into closed won, and it has a higher average sales price associated to it. And the way we help you do that is we help, conversational marketing helps you do that by, like I was just saying, identifying the visitor. Who is it? Where are they in this journey? What page are they on? And then who should we notify on the sales team about that? So some of the things we teach people in the conversational marketing certification, in our conversational sales course, in the books we wrote about this, is the concept of, on the sales side, you intercept a website visit. If you notice one of your target accounts, if you notice one of your named accounts is engaging on your website, chatting in, learning some stuff with the chatbot, and you get that notification on your phone, you should, the thing that will enable your team to do is, your sales team to do is like intercept that visit and provide that experience. It's just like if you were going to the store and you're saying like, look, I'm looking at this product. I'm literally touching a product right now in the store. And it'd be like, I'm looking at a product, but no one's coming over to ask me if I have any questions about XYZ product. That would not be the best practice. That would be, that's not the way you actually build a better reputation. Most people would like to at least be acknowledged that they're in the store looking at a product, right? And so like that's what we're trying to do with websites. We're trying to make them more personal, more engaging, and acknowledge people who are coming to the website. That's the whole point of this. And well, other than of course getting to the sale, getting to revenue.
Yeah, so basically, I'm assuming chatbot alone isn't sufficient from what you're describing, right? Because chatbot, you're seeing a lot of chatbots popping up everywhere. Is it then the contextual recommendation of what the natural next step is that increases the engagement rate and the obviously of conversion ultimately leading to pipeline creation?
Yeah, that's such a good question because a chatbot is not conversational marketing. Live chat's not conversational marketing. Chatbot and live chat are tools, right? Like they're a landing page is a tool. Email is a tool. Email could also be a channel if you say that, right? You could also say that live chat's a channel, but it's not a strategy. What conversational marketing is, I keep going back to a few things, but it's helping you identify the audience of people coming to your website. Where are they in this journey? What page are they on? How are you going to best engage with them in that moment? How are you going to best route them to the right thing or to the right person? So there's routing involved, right? There's notification system involved, right? There's reporting infrastructure and stuff that has to be set up, right? There's integrations that have to be set up to do this correctly. there's a ton of things. That's not just, and then there's a chatbot, of course, what we call it playbooks and drift. There's the chatbot, but there's probably 6 or 7 or 8 easily different technologies or tools you need to use to actually create a conversational marketing strategy. And that's where I think a lot of people get hung up. And I hate to say, like, there are a lot of different and somewhat poorly done chatbots because they don't take into consideration all those other things we just talked about.
Yeah. And the funny thing is I'm on LinkedIn almost every day, probably at least an hour minimum, right? Browsing through content, looking at prospects, just consuming content, all sorts of stuff. And I'm still seeing, I'm inundated with B2B marketers, targeting me with ebooks, with LinkedIn lead ads. So I'm just curious, how long before, obviously it took probably HubSpot almost 10 years to get people to really adapt this whole concept of inbound, right? And it took a little while. So, where do you think is the market in terms of adapting this concept and hopefully embracing this as the better approach to really doing marketing, right? And forgoing of this whole concept of measuring MQLs to report on success.
It's super early because what really needs to happen is it's a reinvention of websites. It's like websites need to be reinvented. Websites are still masters to the marketer and maybe salespeople. Websites need to be reinvented to be a master to the customer and to the seller or to the customer success person at your business. Not to the marketer. The marketer is there to enable the start of the conversation, that particular interaction that's happening during that specific point in the relationship with that person visiting the website. That's what the marketer's job is, right? It's a facilitator, it's an enabler, empowerer. Right now, websites still are very much self-serving to us as businesses. They need to be completely flipped and be optimized and made for the customer. So I think we're very early on in this journey. It's not just the website, but it's all these back-end systems. It's all these things. And there's going to have to be a lot of simplification that has to happen as well. I think marketers and technology companies are somewhat guilty of this. We made it complicated. I think we made it complicated because there's all this data now. So it's like, oh my God, we have all this data. We have to make things complicated. And there's going to be this great simplification that happens over the next 10 years. It might take longer. And I really believe conversational marketing and the power of the conversation itself is going to be a way is going to be a great thing to enable that simplification to happen, because you're getting down to the genesis of the relationship, which is what are people talking about and what do they need and how can we help them and how can we use that information that is captured through the conversation to provide some value to both someone at the business, the marketer, the seller, or the customer success person, or some value to the customer themselves.
Most certainly. Mark, I can sit here and ask a lot more questions around this whole conversation of marketing, but I have one, itching question. Essentially, we all, maybe when HubSpot came out into the picture, started talking about inbound marketing and teaching people about content marketing, we were living in a content deficit generation, right? There wasn't a lot of bloggers creating a ton of content in the marketing arena or in the marketing world, right? And now we're at a content surplus generation with a ton of content, both in the form of written, visual, you name it, right? Videos. So it's not just enough to invest, right? Buying into the whole idea of creating content, but it's also very important to invest the money needed to promote that. So what have you seen really working effectively in the B2B space to get attention from their target audience, right? Because in the early days of building a brand, you're not going to just have natural people just finding your blog organically, right? What have you seen really working well, whether in Drift or in any other companies that you're studying, that's helping them get their customers to see the content that they're producing much more efficiently?
Well, I actually think you missed a piece in that. You said creating it, which is like producing the content and then promoting it. The thing that most people don't do up front is planning. Plan, then produce, then promote, then reflect, which is another thing people don't do. They just do the two middle things, not the bookends, and then actually plan and then produce, promote, etc. I fundamentally believe that there's a lot of there's a lot of content, and a lot of that content is repetitive or too generic or whatever. It's not actually in the voice of the business, or the business doesn't even have a voice, because one, they don't focus enough on brand and community building, the stuff that we talked about in the beginning, and they also don't plan. It's like, well, why do we need this piece of content, and how would we build this piece of content? How do we use this content over time? Again, like how you were talking to me about how you're going to use this piece of content in the format of a show, and you're going to amplify this show to other things. Casted, a company called Casted, they've come up with this concept called amplified marketing. It's super interesting. Love it. And it's about identifying the audience and identifying the experts you're going to talk to. It's about creating the content, and then it's about amplifying the content through the right channels and formats and whatnot. So there's a whole difference. There's a whole different approach that has to be taken now that content is at a saturation point beyond that. And it's getting better, the stuff we just talked about, and getting closer to your customer to really understand what the customer cares about and what content they need from you, and what type of content do they need from you, and what's the best medium and design to put that content within or around. The second thing I would do is you gotta lean harder into community building and brand building. You have to do that these days for your content to actually cut through the noise.
So here's the final question that I have. If you had $1 million, how would you invest that in marketing? How would you allocate it?
It's like an impossible question to answer because there's no context. It's just it's like the kind of stuff we just talked about, right? Oh, you could you have $1 million to create content. What would you create? What's the plan? Who's the audience? What are the goals? So I'm going to throw it back at you. Give me some context. I can maybe answer that question.
So I think, based on what you described, right? If you're trying to build a brand, how would you best allocate that $1 million to make sure you're getting the biggest impact possible it can, right?
Who's the audience though?
It would be a B2B company. Let's say it's in the SaaS sector.
What type of people though? What's the persona?
Let's say if you're actually trying to reach the marketing directors and trying to sell a MarTech product.
That's highly saturated. The question is, this is the thing that most people don't do enough. What's the goals for the first year, the second year, and third year? What does the ramp look like? What's your revenue and operating plan? So I need to know that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand what I'm getting at though? Like it's like you could burn $1 million in a month, probably less than a month. You could, right? Like, what are you trying to do? And then my last question always is, what are you trying to do long term as a business? Are you trying to build a business that's 10 million, 50 million, 100 million, IPO? You trying to sell it? Is it just trying to, like, you get it to a point, make it profitable, and you're really nice, it's a nice, positive cash flow, and you're creating the profit for the business and your employees and team? That's the other question I would have. It's like those three questions: audience, growth, and long-term goal. If you don't ask and answer those questions, you won't have as strong of a marketing strategy as you probably should or need. So I don't have a good answer. I'd say definitely involves content, definitely involves community building, definitely involves data, and it definitely involves hiring the right people. So you're going to put some of that money to people, to content, to hire, to
technology and measurement.
Technology measurement. It's all those classic things. Like, so if you gave me more direction, I would probably have a better answer. I just don't have enough direction. Sorry.
No worries. Well, I think those are important questions someone should be asking, right? Because $1 million seems a lot of money, but in theory, depending on, like you said, how big of an addressable market it is and what's the long-term goal of it is, if you're trying to build a community and brand and all that, that $1 million isn't going to go much, right? You have a lot of things to build, the foundational things to get there. So it's an important question someone should be asking themselves. How would you maximize it?
Yeah, I mean, the last thing, sorry to interrupt, is like what are you selling to, right? Like, I mean, I just assumed, you kind of said you're selling a SaaS product to B2B marketers, but like even that, like, what does that even mean? Like, it goes back to your point about your addressable market, but then like who's the ICP in that addressable market? So it goes back to the plan, then produce, then promote. I don't think, yes, promotion is definitely an issue. But if you don't know who you're promoting to and why you're promoting to them, then the promotion is kind of like, well, I don't know, I'm just going to throw some ads up and just see what happens. Like, it's not going to be very scientific. Anyway.
Makes sense. Well, Mark, I certainly appreciate you sparing this time with me and sharing some of your wisdom and life experience. And hopefully this inspires other marketers to do more conversational marketing and invest into building communities. Thank
you, Samuel. Thank you for having me on the show. It was a pleasure.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by One IMS, a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.